Snow is not an essential part of Christmas. A quick glance at a globe or a map would show that easily 2/3 of the world wouldn't know what to do with it if it fell on Christmas. It's more a mark of the popular culture of those of us who live above, say, the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean Sea, that we even insist on dreaming of a white Christmas. Christmas and snow is simply an accident of geography. Beth kept telling herself that as she sat in the hot sun. It was the first day of Southern Hemisphere summer, December 21st. She was taking the Sunday afternoon to rest and be grateful. As she often did at such times, kind of self-inventory, she asked herself a question. Why am I here? Those 4 words have such great power and insight and meaning. You could say it as a lament. Oh, why am I here? Or an inventory of her calling. Why am I here? For some reason on this day, she was remembering her early years and wondering too, no, not wondering so much as staring in wonder at how far she has come in the life she's led. She shook her head and there was some sweat going off. This was a far cry from her Minnesota memories of sledding and skating around Christmas. That and those colored lights on palm trees just didn't feel right, even after all these years. She'd lived in many places like this for more than 25 years. Christmas, though, without snow in some part of her memory still didn't make sense. Yeah, she sure enjoyed doing Christmas shopping without all those layers of clothes. But a white Christmas was just memory. And for some reason, bringing her back that day. She knew she wasn't so much in love with snow, but the memories. And those were good. She first met her husband, now married 30 years, in a snowstorm. They were students at the same college. He was an international student from a tropical culture and climate, and this was his first time in the cold. The afternoon of the first snow that year, they were both heading back to their dorms when he slipped on some unseen ice and slid into her, and they both were knocked into the soft snowbank. He smiled and said, "Imagine running into you here," helping her back up. "I'm Yarrow," he said. "Beth," she replied, and she brushed the snow away. Thus began Beth's love of snow and Yarrow. They dated through college, surprised a lot of people in their hometown. They got married. It was an interracial marriage, and in those days that was not as common. But they made sure everything was okay. They both moved on then to graduate school, decided that their faith was important to them, and made social mission work their career. They lived and raised their family in a number of countries as aid and social workers for their church denomination. Over the last 25 years, Christmas was usually warm and sunny. They were now at the end of their 10th year in Yarrow's home country, and they had more ahead. She thought of how she raised their children there, now grown, in careers of their own, giving them a sense of ministry and calling. She remembered how she and Yarrow had tried to live the values they preached. Beth knew that this was nostalgia, but it was a nostalgia bringing back important memories, which we often do at the end of a year. That seemed especially important this year. So many things were disrupted, she knew, by fear and discrimination, by illness and death. There seemed to be no end to it. So those memories brought back a little bit of a sense of calm, a little bit of memory that there can be good times. Even though in this day and age, when one thing seems to end, another one pops up, there'd always be someone show up at her office at the church, someone needing a problem to be solved or just find comfort. She thought of the four themes of Advent, of the four candles of hope and peace and love and joy and justice. They were the calls to worship that month. Each was seen in the actions and events in her year now coming to an end. That very morning, they had lit the last candle. There was the need for joy and justice. She remembered the young man she helped and her team helped and worked with in the local prison. He had been targeted by a local gang out seeking revenge for who knows what. His own history, though, got in the way. He had a record too, and he was charged for inciting the incident and sentenced for 3 to 5 years. Beth's justice team worked hard and found the needed evidence and witnesses. And after a long series of interventions, he was released. There was peace, a long missing element of an elderly woman's life becoming a reality when the elder care support team received a new grant. That allowed them to provide a worker to help the woman to maintain her small efficiency apartment, as well as do shopping and give companionship. Over and over in that year, Beth had discovered that peace was a rare commodity, that many people lived in the daily uncertainty of hunger and loneliness. While an overwhelming task, providing others with peace, actually returned peace to Beth many times over. Anyone who is a peacemaker finds peace. Yes, and there was hope. Hope. Like faith, hope is a promise of things not yet seen, but some things that are allowed to grow. There were those families who became sick or who lost their jobs in the economic chaos of the past year. There were the many ways that hope was stolen from people by circumstances, and they didn't know where to turn. And her team and her church managed to bring a little bit of hope, much as the Advent season is called to bring hope to the world. But the greatest of all these was love. Many opportunities, many expressions of love as she looked back on the year. There were those sudden pandemic deaths where communities came to grieve together, even with social distancing. No one needed to be completely alone or isolated, even in a lockdown. The outpouring of food and goods after devastating fires and floods in too many parts of her country. She or members of her team were there. It was tough. Her emotions were raw many times, entangled in the sadness and care for the ones that she would hand the supplies to. But love was the bond that kept her from falling apart herself. The love she received and the love she was given to share. Each story, and there were many, was unique. Yet everyone was empowered by the same love from God, which was soon to be celebrated in a manger from a distant time and distant land. She realized that all those needs also were hers. She needed the hope and the joy, the peace and the love and justice. She had experienced that. She was freed from some of her own paralyzing experiences and memories and discovered some of her own weaknesses. She had found a new peace, a peace built in the reality of acceptance. Hope was the motivating feeling for her. Not just that the world would calm down and be a better place, but that she herself would know that same calm. Finally, and most importantly, it was a year of love. Over the years, she had seen her share of the outcast and abandoned, what the songwriter Bob Dylan called the confused, accused, and misused. It had been her calling, hers and Yarrow's, moving from country to country, where snow at Christmas was unknown, and Christmas could be as hot a day and as brutal as any summer day. And it was in those memories that she got loved, that she remembered the love that she and Yarrow shared and their children, and able to take it, the love that her church experienced, the love that her church gave. She had memories of her childhood, the quiet wonder of Christmas. And she knew the world now where that Prince of Peace was born, where peace and love and hope could often be a very rare commodity. That was a treasure she knew, that she nurtured in her own life. She took a deep breath at that and smiled, gave a word of thanks for her life and her work. She went back to that morning's service in the story of the meeting of Mary and Elizabeth. As never before, at the end of this year, the words of Mary's song about the birth of her son in that first snowless Christmas made sense. Christmas turns the world upside down. Mary knew, as she sang her prayer, that things were never going to be the same again. And at that same moment, in that same song, calls us to work for the justice and joy, the peace and the hope, and the love. The mighty one, sang Mary, has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Beth wondered if she could say that today. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation, something she had tried to pass on to her own children. God has shown strength with his arm and scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. She thought of the ways she worked with people to help them find peace. He's lifted up the lowly, filled the hungry, and sent the rich away empty. Mary smiled. Christmas was coming. Like all who work for peace and justice, like all who work at filling others with hope and sharing it freely in joy and love, Beth's soul was filled. Traditions and nostalgia, even for snow, come and go. These four, the peace and the love and the joy, will last. She was ready for Christmas.